Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty much ready now to talk about the podcast.
Yeah, me too. Welcome to the Short Stack, everybody.
Yeah, welcome to Short Stack. It's your host Matthew Poindexter.
Your other host, Trey Slayton.
Yeah, and we're here. I am super excited to start our first episode here. Definitely a lot of good news, a lot of stuff we've been reading. Just finished Citizen Jack on my end, so
Yeah, and I just finished Original Sins on my end, and Original Sin.
yeah,
Sins with an S is totally different than Original Sin, but both good. Good event. Came out
good.
of nowhere for Marvel in 2014.
Yeah, it's another example of like one of those comics that, or I should say, comic event that has a decent amount of spin-offs. Would you say?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I would say everyone has their own. Not to get too much into it because we might do an episode on this sooner or later. Not to say everyone has their own sin, supposedly secret is what it is, and it goes into pretty good depth and on everyone's secret as far as the sins. It goes more in depth on that. That's like a 3-part side story each issue, with one main story continuing throughout the 5 issues for that. And for Original Sin, it's not gonna get into any of it because there's a lot of twists and secrets. I'm just gonna say I surprisingly liked it. Back when this came out, I wasn't a fan for whatever reason, but my opinion has changed as time has gone on 6 years later.
Yeah, so just to give a little bit more context on that series, is Original Sin was a pretty big event that I think was announced or dropped during like what, Free Comic Book Day, and was it 2014, 15?
So 2014, yeah, they would have done it in the spring, and then that was the summer event.
Yeah,
But
so it's pretty common, at least for Marvel, to just drop one of those big comic book events. Because I think, what was it, War of the Realms was the most recent one.
War of the Realms was their summer one, and then Absolute Carnage was like their fall winter one.
Yeah, and I thought the Absolute Carnage one was still running though.
It's done now. It just finished up in January, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Time's all messed up with the delays in comics and
Oh
everything.
yeah, no, especially with the whole like quarantine, coronavirus, comic industry has just been thrown around, surprisingly. Uh, I know at least a lot of my local comic book shops wasn't clear on what they could and couldn't do. I know at least my favorite one, shout outs to Torpedo, not sponsoring us, but just wanted to give a good shout out since I think they're doing a good job handling it. Um, Originally just did curbside pickup, eventually only online auctions only, so you had to have it shipped to you. And I think they recently opened back up last Wednesday. So that makes mean a number of other comic shops hopefully are able to make it. Unfortunately, uh, just profit margins with comic shops are not as big, especially if it's solely comics in comparison to comic shops that also do other stuff on the side, such as Magic the Gathering or video game resale, which is quite unfortunate for a lot of people who that might be their only comic shop in town, and it's hard to support local business if you can't shop there.
Right, and everything's state by state. Matt's in Nevada, I'm in Michigan, and we're still all that stuff's still all closed down until further notice.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to vary by whatever state you're in. If you can, please support your local comic shop. Buy online, do curbside pickup, whatever you can to support them, because at least for them, uh, it's definitely a trying time. And if we want people to get into comics, there got to be comic shops around to, well, service you, because unfortunately, digital comics are not the way to go. Which brings us to our first news story. Marvel Digital Comics is closing. Trace, would you like to take off on this a little bit?
Yeah, so in the 8 years I've been in the comic book business, comic book game, reading, collecting, so on, this is the second time this has happened. Like back when Marvel Now came out, they had like a little AR digital code you could also go on, and it was actually really cool. They would give you more in depth on the comic. that you just scan the QR code.
Yeah, and
But
just to kind of chime in on that, wasn't that also you would only get that with the comic book you purchased? So if you bought physical, you would get a digital copy.
so yeah, that was kind of how comics ended up becoming $4 instead of three, as you were paying for that extra $1 deal to get a digital also, so they charge an extra dollar, and now it's just $4 regardless of any of that.
Yeah, which we can always
But
like chalk it up to inflation, but I think that was just Marvel's way, and I guess DC too, since they're doing it now. Uh, just kind of sliding a price under.
and that's another issue facing the comic book industry is pricing, because a lot of comics now, if you look at the top 100 for a couple months ago, before this all started, it was a lot of the prices were going on $5 comics and $6 comics cover price. It wasn't even so much $4 anymore, and the average overall price was breaking over four. So it was
Yeah, so the price of the hobby is definitely going up. That being said, just bringing this all back around, digital comics, at least for us, we tend to avoid them with a few specific cases, which we'll go into a little bit later. But just to kind of report on the whole Marvel digital comics closing, June 2nd is going to be your cutoff date for when you can keep redeeming with them. You will keep your comics if you sync them with Comixology or Comixology, which I believe is a company or hosting site owned by Amazon. Um, to clarify on this, you can still redeem your comics. You will not be able to purchase new ones through the digital shop. Clarification on that. Uh, Apologies on that misinformation.
and if you are, see, me and Matt don't do digital comics for many different reasons. But if you are going to do digital, go with Comixology. It's the best right now, currently, as far
Yeah,
as digital comics
it's
go.
it's backed by Amazon, so if Comixology were to go down, we're also looking at the Audible service and what is it? Their Kindle hosting
Yeah, the
platform.
Kindle
So
rights.
which would bring up a whole nother bag of worms into whole do you own your collection or not? But yeah, the only way we would ever argue going digital is if you're buying the subscription service and you're getting access to a comic book library. So you pay in similar to like Amazon, which I don't like the idea of that either, just from a collector aspect. But if you're someone who wants to enjoy the service or enjoy the stories that like comic book artists, which with the way things are going, that's probably what it's going to be like in the future. You're going to have to subscribe to your specific publisher and just enjoy content from there. But similar to what DC's doing now with their DC, I think Unlimited or Universal, I forget what it's called. They're bundling in with their streaming service, so essentially two for one.
And for new readers out there, I mean, give it a go. Let's read some stories on some heroes, or superheroes if you want to go that route, or on indie projects, and just then go buy the physical copy. Support your local comic book shop. Support the industry in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Like we're always big proponents on keeping it local, so make sure you're buying from there. Uh, Speaking of which, big issues that's coming out. Definitely one that everyone should be on everyone's radar is the Batman issue 92 coming out June 10th with a new first appearance. Well, I shouldn't say first appearance.
First cover.
First cover of the new supervillain Punchline. Who is Punchline? We don't really know.
Not sure.
The most information that we got is it looks like she's supposed to be a replacement for Harley Quinn after she left Joker, which has been a big sort of comic book move on event, whatever have you.
This is supposed to be a pretty big print run from what I'm hearing, and hard to say the numbers right now, but this is going to be like an event in itself, just the release of this issue. Getting that cover, whatnot, have you, just owning it will be big for anyone in the comic book industry. And this might be another one where every couple years you hear it on the news. Oh, Punchline, yada yada, on the
Yeah,
cover.
and just kind of to chime in on that with Punchline, if you own her first cover on this, and for whatever reason they decide to do a spin-off series, let's say she does a appearance or cameo on the Harley Quinn TV animation that's going on with that Universal service, which I'm still reading and watching on. I'll give you a review on that later, but to keep things on track, the value of those comics that release with this new event will go up so long as she stays in the media. That's all determined on how her character's portrayed or if readers find her interesting. Personally, at least from my side, I don't really see her standing around too long. Maybe a year of mentions, but anything after that, she'll probably fade into out of existence along with what is it, Joker's daughter?
Right, right. It's just so hard for new characters of Marvel or DC to become established right now. Even good characters. It's hard. Like an example for Marvel would be Silk, a fine spinoff of Spider-Man. That's one they've had a couple series of, and I'm pretty sure they're bringing back another series of Silk. And there's works for it to be Silk to possibly have her own movie, but it's just
Yeah.
hard to keep those new characters relevant when you got
Speaking
the
of
legacy.
Silk, wasn't there talks with Marvel or not Marvel Studios, Sony Studios, the same ones who did Enter the Spider-Verse, to just do an all-female casting
Right.
for that? So
Yeah.
that's another example where if you own that Silk comic and they do drop that movie, it's definitely going to be going up for at least the base price is definitely going to stay up, but once that's announced and once the hype on that is just being written, price value on those comics will shoot up without a doubt.
And just a forewarning, if anyone wants to go into buying these comics physically, watch the speculation heat, because a lot of times people are trying to scalp you on a lot of the bid sites.
Yeah, so if you're getting into a comic book series or you're trying to get those issues before they go up, you're gonna have to beat the speculation. It's really hard. Just moving on to our next news point we wanted to make is with Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth, DC Vertigo series, recently got picked up for a Netflix series, which is being produced by Robert Downey Jr. and the Netflix cast producers. I'm not exactly sure of how that's going to be going, but it was enough to renew interest in Sweet Tooth. I think that first printing now is going for about 140. If you wanted to get the entire run of, I think, 42 issues, it's about 400. So it's definitely going to set you back a pretty penny.
Right. Yeah. That was as far as this week going. We're looking at 150, 200 now for Sweet Tooth, a raw copy, not even a graded copy.
Yeah,
getting into grades just for the casual viewer.
Just to explain what it means to have a comic graded, why you should, why you shouldn't, and we might go on have like a separate episode on this, but Trace, give the raw summary of it.
Basically, you send your comic in to a professional. CGC is one of the main ones. You'll see that the most often for comic books, and basically a professional is going to look at your comic and see how close is it to mint. So when it first gets printed off the presses, that is mint condition for the most part. Some comics come off with print damage and so on, and that can be another whole another discussion and issue on that. But basically, it's a 10-point system. 10 is mint, 9 to 10, 9.8 is near mint. Then you go from there to 8, fair, good, and then so on to not even having a cover and being incomplete, which would be a 0.
Yeah. And with a lot of those comics, like definitely modern age comics, you would expect to be in that 9.0 range. Anything before older that, I think even Golden Age, like, isn't a 6 or a 7 depending on the comic considered good.
Oh yeah, for Golden Age, if you could get like a 6, a high 6 or a low 7, that would be amazing. Just thinking back, we're looking at 80 years, 70, 80 years for that material now, and
Yeah,
just
and
paper.
these are comics that are obviously not being stored. Bag and board, I think, is a reasonably new thing, with at least how people have been taken care of, and there have been strives in how people are taking care of comics now. So it's only gotten better, and especially with the increased print runs, modern comics will not appreciate as well as the Golden Age comics, which I don't remember the cutoff for the Golden Age. Is that 40s, 50s, or older?
Um, so Golden Age goes really to when Marvel comes into the picture in the early '60s with like Fantastic Four, X-Men. That's the cutoff. I'll have to look it up. I don't remember what the historians are saying these days, but that Silver Age is Marvel. When Marvel comes on the scene, that's the beginning of Silver Age.
Yeah, so it's definitely, if you want comics that are going to appreciate and go up, and you have the money to dump into it, go Golden Age. Otherwise, if you're just the normal casual, like most of us are, including myself, I still consider myself a somewhat casual when it comes to collecting comics. Go modern. I just prefer the art style, and at the end of the day, just collect what you want.
They Yeah, as far as writing and art, modern's my preferred because that's our generation. When you go back into silver, even bronze, copper, those are good stories, but the writing can be a little outdated at times, using slang and referring to certain things that just aren't relevant, or telling jokes you just wouldn't even find funny in this point. Just cheesy would be the term, or campy.
Yeah, but I think it also gives a good snapshot into like what that generation was thinking about.
It's a capturing a moment in time for sure, and it's something you can always go back and look at.
So it's definitely nostalgic, especially if we have any older viewers out there. But for most of us, or at least in our early 20s, 30s, it's kind of a little hard to relate to. But
And going back to Sweet Tooth for a minute here, it's gonna be 8 1-hour episodes for season one. See if it gets a season two, or how they're gonna plan out
yeah,
that series.
just based on the amount of content, especially when we've seen some of the pretty good adaptions with Umbrella Academy, I don't expect this series to be anywhere close to finished after 8 hours. There is a lot of stuff that goes down in that series, which I'm aiming to get another episode in sometime in the near future, just talking about Sweet Tooth alone, just because I think it's a really good hidden gem that didn't get the notoriety it deserves, especially with the revival coming around. So if you do end up getting into the Sweet Tooth series, either with trade paperback or finding an online source, I'm not going to say go pirate it, but
Yeah, just look around. That's all we're really saying. Just look around, check your options, because
yeah.
now is not the time to try and buy an issue one.
No, no,
With
no,
how
no.
hot that is right now, that would be a bad investment because it's going to come down.
Yeah,
The
it's
show
if
won't
it
be made for some time because of COVID and all that, so
so
I would
it's
not buy it.
definitely going to be put on delay. Uh, we're going to see the same effect about what happened with Umbrella Academy with a lot of the first and older issues with those is they're going to drop like a rock. Boys, on the other hand, there wasn't a lot of printing with that series, so we're expecting those comics to still be a little pricey. I know I've got my eye on eBay and trying to pick those up, but I'm happy enough to say I was able to pick up Deus Machina, so I have run on that, which we may or may not do a future episode on that. Just a little background on that. That series, I think, was written by the same guy who did Saga. So definitely good stuff to pick up on there.
Yeah, Brian K. Vaughan's his name. He's one of the top writers in the industry right now. If you could get anything written by him, I'm sure it would be a good read.
Yeah,
Why the Last Man being another one of his series.
excellent series. Again, another one we might do a episode on. You got a better chance though with getting, I think, trade paperback on those, just because of the printing runs on those. I believe were very limited. I don't think
We're,
Walking Dead limited, but well, early Walking Dead.
yeah, I
But
think they were low, but not as low as Walking Dead the first couple issues. The issue is with Why the Last Man is it's just that became kind of like a pop culture. It's referenced in local media. Some casual people might that are even in comics might know what Why the Last Man is. And as
that's
far
just
as
it just transcends comic books. The story that it
yeah,
portrays, um, definitely going to be a recommended reading on that. So while we're on the topic of recommended readings, uh, main topic, episode 1 of Bedlam.
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 Ooh,
Image series, definitely one of the biggest recommendations that at least came from Trace. Haven't regretted it. Great series. You want to take over on just giving a little spiel, what it is, when it came out, maybe
yeah.
some info on
So
the writers.
Bedlam is a series that one of the first series I got into. It's an Image comic, so Image is if we were to say if you don't know anything about the publishing studios, you got DC, Marvel. Image is the biggest indie publisher, which if you make your comic with them, all the writers and artists own the rights to their comics they make, giving them the most chance to make future money off of their comic, not contract work or freelance work. So it's very beneficial to them. The series has Nick Spencer as the writer. You may have seen him, or maybe you want to pick up his work. Secret Avengers, Superior Foes of Spider-Man, and Cloak and Dagger, some other things he's worked on. Artist was Riley Erasmo. I can't say enough good things about the art in this and the writing. I think it goes hand in hand.
Yeah,
Riley
especially with.
worked on.
Sorry for jumping in. It's just I really
Sorry.
want to say this. Nick Spencer, his art, amazing. Before I got into Bedlam, just his
Nick
Rasputin.
Spencer, writer. Nick
Oh,
Spencer,
Nick Spencer.
writer.
My bad. Yeah. Riley Rosmo. His covers for Rasputin, one of the first comic series I picked up through Image. Great, amazing artist. So that it should give you an idea of just it's eye popping. It's enough to just get you to take the comic book off the shelf and just start reading it.
Yeah, it's needless to say, this is a series we'd highly recommend. But a disclaimer before we go any further: this, if you're looking at comics and you go, "Oh, how mature can they get? How violent, grotesque, and edgy can a comic get?" This gets way out there. I would not personally recommend this to any kids.
This is not a kid friendly story.
No,
But I think it also does a liberty of showing like one of the strengths of Image Publishing, complete and utter control of the creative direction of what a comic can go through, because under no circumstance I think the story could ever be published under any of the other big two, either DC or Marvel.
no way. Not even on one of their mature labels for the big two would you ever see a story like this. So to get into the story, it was published first in 2012. It only went 11 issues. As of currently, there's been no word on if it is canceled or if it's coming back. It last published in 2014. So we're waiting on this. But currently, the writer, Nick Spencer, he's real big at Marvel. He's doing Amazing Spider Man and running that side of the Marvel Comics universe. And he's doing really well. I really like Amazing Spider Man right now, Nick Spencer, and I'd recommend it to everyone. It's only a couple of years old, only on issue 42, so that could be something to get new readers involved in. And that may be something we'll talk about in a later date. Going back to the series, or a rumor has it has to do with conflicts with the artist. And that's a disclaimer I have to say about Image Comics in general.
And that's all just hearsay. This series does not really have a lot of information about what happened on the back end. It just seems like a one-hit wonder, but just with the quality of the writing and art, we believe that it's a really good series to just get new readers into and to spark interest. If we can just get enough people to show interest in this, we would love to see this picked back up.
Yeah, I would love to see this finish. Just even if it was just like 2 more arcs or 1 more arc after this, and just finish it up. I would be happy with that.
Yeah,
Even
they could definitely wrap this up, and I think maybe another 6 issues, which is a lot.
yeah.
That's another year. But if you're doing bi-monthly, a lot more time than the weekly serialization you see with other comics.
So getting into the gist of this book, it's a
Just
detective story.
hold on, I gotta preface this. There will be spoilers for what we talk about, but we're gonna keep it on the download or down low, just so that people can get into it and still enjoy it. God knows that we're gonna butcher the description of it or even the summary of what happens or what goes on, but pick it up. I guarantee it. Even with our terrible description, you will like it if you're into the sort of thriller crime drama.
And we'll try to keep spoilers just to the first issue, and then some key points we liked from the rest of the series so far. So what I was saying, it's a crime detective story at heart. It's got grounded heroes, villains. They're not, far as we can tell, I didn't see any superhero powers jumping out of me at any point, or supervillain powers, nothing like that. Our main characters, Matter Red slash Fillmore. We'll get into more of that in a minute. Ramira Acevedo, the cop, and Matt Severin slash the First, our hero, our main antagonist. Also.
And
So,
just to kind of add on that, a big character that does also appear is the Doctor, who kind of just sits more towards the background as a piece, but is definitely a large part of the story. And unfortunately, he won't really be expanded on until I think if we ever get any future issues.
right, we don't really know his whole origin or what his true motives are at this point. So speaking of what this whole first issue was about, the plot is Matter Red. He's a mass killer, and this is the scene where even for mature readers, I gotta warn you, it's
Yeah. So
Matter Red.
think of Joker in I guess a cooler getup. Whole I think he had like a skull mask and like a whole like red design.
Like
Definitely
red
good.
smiley face.
Yeah, red
teeth,
smiley face, teeth. Definitely just a big wacko nut job. So
who loves to kill children and women, and that's where we get into this whole, even this part. This is quite graphic. There is some child killing going on, and the mass murdering of women and children. Just to put it out there, it's
all
no,
in the first issue. This is
yeah,
and it just gets even crazier off the ball from there. So if you've got like a weak stomach or you're not a huge fan of just seeing violence, we recommend maybe taking a pass on this. But for myself, I think it's used in a tasteful format.
it's not edgy to be edgy in any way, and I feel the art really does a service of showing it in a way that this guy, Matter Red, he's really just mentally insane,
He
criminally insane.
lives quite literally in his own world. And as the series goes on, we see this sort of split between his world and Matter's Red world. And I think the art design and just the art direction of where it's going just capitalizes and shows a good polarization between those two characters. Same
Yeah,
body,
between
two characters.
Fillmore and Matter Red.
Yeah. So yeah, two characters, same body. So was it Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Yeah, that's a great comparison. That's how you'd compare. So they capture Matter Red, and he escapes. They think he escapes, or he killed himself, one or the other. And what happens is the Doctor comes into play, and he does brain surgery to make Matter Red into Fillmore. So Fillmore's his civilian name, and he's been rehabilitating for some years, and
Yeah.
has just been released to the public. And
Well, say to released, it was more of they essentially just experimented on him, just some creative lobotomy, and a lot of the imagery in that I think is very creative, surreal even. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not at that point. And as the series goes on, you start to see small flashbacks into his whole rehabilitation process. And needless to say, it was very painful to just watch and go through, but very engrossing. Just once you start getting into a lot of those scenes, the comic is near impossible to put down.
yeah, once you start, this is, as Matt can attest, this is a quick read. Matt, you finished it in just a couple hours. Once, like from start to finish, you
It
just were
was
engrossed.
11 issues, so this is one of the comics I think that you should pick up if you can. If you can get issues through your local comic box or comic book stores, go from there. Otherwise, you can still find full runs on eBay, although it may be a little bit hard to pick up those first printings.
And this is an affordable first comic. So what we're talking about here, this is a comic you can get at cover price or less possibly. So
You can definitely undershoot and probably get it for about $2.50 an issue, $2. You can get it in two formats, of course. You can start off with either what we prefer, just physical comic books, bag and board, or if you want to do the graphic novel, trade paperback. I think each issue or both volumes run at about 10 or no, I think it was 15 or 20. So you'd be set back on $40 just getting through the entire, well, up to what we have in the story.
and going back to the story, we meet up with Fillmore after he's done all this brain surgery, and throughout the series you'll see many flashbacks of him recovering as Matter Red and more sequences of Matter Red. He wants to help. The only thing he's good at though is mass killers and solving murders. So that's where the detective case comes in, where he calls up Ramira of Acevedo.
I'm fine with just calling her Ramira. If
Ramira from this point on.
yeah,
I'm butchering that. Sorry if anyone's got that last name. And that is the cop of our story, the main detective.
yeah,
And along
essentially
with
the straight edge, the person who is I am the law. I'm gonna follow it. I'm gonna get this guy whatever it takes.
and along the way, you got Matt Severin, or better known to most as the first arc superhero of the story. He is the ultimate justice kind of like a Batman. You could say it, kind of like a Batman, but more brutal justice. And he's also trying to solve cases. And I wish we would have got more of him, to be honest. He's really cool, in my opinion. His costume, his demeanor, all that.
Yeah, for those just describing it right off the bat, his costume to me looks like a cross between I shouldn't say a cross. It's the the red hood, like bubble dome kind of thing with the silver mask, or the complete silver all lining throughout the suit.
Silver, all silver look with a cape.
Yeah, it definitely
Silver
looks
cape.
great in the comic. But as Trace was saying before, he's definitely the first is used as a tool. The story maybe takes a tangent and follows him for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's Matter Red and Romera. That's it. Which one of the things or questions that's not answered in this series is how does Romera know the first? Because it seems like she's or he or yeah she is his only point of contact.
Kind of like Gordon and Batman kind of situation.
Yeah, which
In the
now
same.
that I'm realizing it, the more we talk about it, this story definitely shows a lot of parallels with the whole Batman and Joker relationship. This is just, I guess, someone else's take on it with different characters, which is not to say it's a parody. This is definitely just a homage or just following some of the same tropes, because I don't think it's too crazy to say there's one dude who obviously is a vigilante and takes hard justice with another guy who's completely insane and just wants to cause chaos.
I like that parallel between the two also, and I agree. One thing from just thinking about what you got to look forward to, readers, is there is a religious killer going around mutilating people that were also.
I just call him Catholic King. I don't know what else to call him.
I that's a good name because I have no idea what to call him. But he's mutilating other people that were also sadly molested by a priest.
Wasn't that the same guy in the series?
The Catholic king.
Yeah, that one dude, wasn't he the one doing the molesting? I might have
Uh,
completely missed that because it was so that part was a
he
little confusing.
he was molesting them, yes, but he was. This all stems from him being molested by a priest. So he was going all the way. There was many of them that were victims, and he was killing all of the other victims as well.
Yeah,
And
so this is as much like he's a cult essentially. Like this is a big spoiler, by the way, for the first arc of the series. So
not to,
spoilers.
not to get too much further in depth on the first arc, and these all play out kind of like case by case detective solve the case for each arc. Is how I was foreseeing how the series would have continued if it keeps on going in the future.
Yeah,
If that's how
it's
it is.
definitely a good crime drama. I think like Criminal Minds,
And we don't have
where
much of that right now as far as a genre goes, based in more. I mean, you have Batman, of course, but based in on this indie scene, more in this realism take of superheroes or supervillains.
yeah, especially,
Yeah.
and this is true with just a lot of Image comics, is it's really hard to put them into like specific genres other than just referring to them by their like genre.
That's what's so great about Image is they blend genres so well. Like, say for an example, another series we brought up earlier, Saga, that's compared to like Star Wars meets Game of Thrones. That's the comparison that was given. A giant space opera set in sci-fi and fantasy, which I
Yeah,
highly recommend.
Saga definitely a good series for people who want to poke on it, but I'd like just to backtrack and just keep it on with Bedlam. Uh, this series is definitely, I think, one of the best representations as to what Image can offer from a tone. I know people really don't like the superhero sort of idea, especially with it being kind of crammed down our throats. But I think this series sort of transcends that and puts a good twist on it that doesn't put a focus on, hey, we're just a bunch of heroes beating up villains. Here's how we do it, and here's how they fake an issue or that we can't overcome.
I think this would be a good first series for anyone who, in their mind, had a stereotype of what they thought comics were from seeing many of the Marvel or DC movies versus what it could be, like what a comic can be. And this is a prime example.
Exactly. And for people who do end up reading all the way through and enjoying and just kind of wanting more of that sort of drama, crime solving, and sort of just piecing things back together, I have two recommendations, at least from my end, of where to go with this. If you want something a lot more hard and gritty, it is supernatural. Gideon Falls is definitely a good jump off, just because of the art style is somewhat similar. Uh, just with Gideon Falls being a good example of a lot of that playing with color and sort of using a color to represent a character or what's going on in the scene. The second probably being Nailbiter, where if you like that more of I want to track serial killers and uncover a story or a conspiracy, go with that.
I completely agree with both recommendations. The art style, to put it in like the context, we are no mean art majors or no art
Fuck, I can't
as
pick up a
well as
pencil.
yeah, we're not art. The best we can say is it was like a palette of gray colors, grayscale kind of is used with a lot of red for Bedlam. That's a good example. Would you
Hmm.
agree, Matt? It's a lot of red on gray
I just
with not
completely
a
forgot.
photorealism, but
So the name of this series and the town is Bedlam. So that's kind of where the whole title comes, along with what the definition of Bedlam is. I think it's for um, a place of like mental rescue, or just kind of like another word for an insane asylum.
a scene of uproar and confusion, and that explains the series
Ah, I was
completely.
completely off then.
It's all right. It's as far as our definition goes, that explains the city so well, which is always seems to be in one mass killing or having a major
Terrorist attack left and
terrorist
right.
attack, something of that nature going nonstop in this big metropolitan area.
Yeah, and it's the series' job to kind of explain like how it's all tied into Matter Red, which is if you guys aren't convinced now, I'd say I'm not really sure if there's much more we can say on convincing you to pick up the comic. Just pick up the comic so that we can get some traction. Tweet, retweet it, bother the author, an artist, tell them we want it back, because I want to see this like the city or this series finished.
I would love that. I would love. I've been waiting 6 years.
It's been 6 years. Okay, I can't think of any other series that's had to wait with as long. And as I'm saying that, I can think of at least two others.
Without a cancellation at this point. If it had been canceled, that'd be another thing. But there is no confirmed cancellation. It is just on indefinite hiatus.
Yeah, which I mean, we've seen crazier things. I mean, Sweet Tooth is getting a second series running,
And who would
which
have thought?
yeah, I read the series. It ended fine. It'd be like I would be more the only thing that could one up um, Bedlam getting picked up again would be if Why the Last Man were to get picked up again. Considering that series is straight up done.
Yeah, that ending just ends,
It's
and that
down.
would be something we'll talk about one day.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be on the stack, say the
That's
least.
definitely. So
But
to finish things up, Matt, what are you looking forward to coming out next week? You got any recommendations or anything you got on your pull list?
I am looking forward to just seeing my box filled with comics. At least coming back after the quarantine and sort of seeing an empty box. It's a little disappointing, but understandable.
You want to
Uh,
tell that story, Matt, about what you did the other day?
oh yeah, so I went to the comic shop for the first time after quarantine, right next to my workplace. It is the first time I'd ever walked into that shop and had nothing in my box. Because typically I'm picking up like I shouldn't say 30 or 40, because that's usually after I wait a couple months. Just nothing. Nothing was dropped, nothing was released. Or they were just getting around to filling out the boxes since the hiatus. I did see the table was out, but long story short, there was nothing there other than what they had as soon as they closed down, which is good and bad. I was able to pick up a first issue of Strange Academy. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I can't make heads or tails on whether or not to recommend that or not. But definitely got enough of a backlog that I'm not hurting too hard on it. I'm more interested in catching up with Immortal Hulk just because that is a great superhero horror story for anyone who has any interest in the Hulk.
Cannot recommend that enough. I
Yeah.
really can't.
Good luck getting a first issue on that, though. Uh, it is skyrocketed with the amount of popularity that's been pushing. at this point, just get what you can on it, pick it up if you can. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say with that. But
Read it any way possible.
read it any
Yeah,
way
don't
possible.
get
Yep.
first prints on that. That will set you back for that first. I don't know how many arcs right now. A couple $100 easy just to get those first couple arcs.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. Which, if you see a first, this is why I say like if you see a first issue or if you just like the cover art, just pick it up. Um, Also looking forward to seeing if I can get a first issue of Strange Adventures, which is a reboot of a space fantasy comic from what is it, 1980, 90?
Yeah, it's the most recent iteration by a well-known writer that I would recommend any day of the week. Tom King.
Yeah, we
Other works.
I just want to get it just because I love the cover art on it. If anyone's had a chance to see it.
Cover art's good. I agree. It catches you. What else he's known for? Other things I'd recommend. The Vision. He did a 12-issue run for Marvel on that. He just came off doing a 3-year Batman run as the main Batman writer. 1 through 85.
Is that the Detective Comics series I'm thinking?
No, he did the Batman main line.
Okay, because
Batman
like
series.
that side of DC when it comes to all those Batman arcs are just confusing. So we're gonna do our best to see if we ever can just sit down with an episode and just explain modern Batman for anyone who wants to get into it. But that's gonna be way farther down the line. While we're on that note, Trace, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to. I got it pulled up right here, Matt. Marvel's back next week. They're the last major publisher to come back, and I'm very excited for that. Just to name a few from Marvel. Even though I might just buy them all just to be supportive. Since they're all comic book publishers right now are printing in very limited runs of comics. There's not too many series each week right now, so it's not oversaturated.
Yeah,
I'm looking
so now's definitely a good time to like jump in if you can.
definitely jumping. I'm looking forward to getting next issue, Amazing Spider-Man 43. I'm looking forward to where that's heading off. Left on a sad note, actually, in issue 42. Highly recommended. It's by the same author who did Bedlam, Nick Spencer. I'm also looking forward to getting Avengers 33 and just seeing where that heads. I might have to read some issues. It's been a while, so I'm not really sure what's happening in that. And trying out Star Wars Dr. Aphra, issue 1, volume 2, which from the looks of it might be getting her own show on Disney Plus, so that may be something to try and catch up on.
Would you call that out as a money issue?
The first appearance is in Darth Vader. Let me look it up real quick. Darth Vader, issue 2, I believe. I would say yes and no. It just depends. She is popular right now as far as Marvel Comics goes, but as far as we'll have to see how the show goes for mainline casual fans.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Can we just go back a little bit? I'm not exactly sure about who this character even is.
Me either. I looked into getting her first appearance for some time, and I may have to finally do that this week. I just know at one point she worked for Darth Vader.
It's like a protege, Sith in training.
I think it was more like on mercenary work or I'll kill your whole family kind of thing.
Another mercenary series. So female version of the Mandalorian.
No, she seems more of like a smart, like just off the cover. I'm thinking Han Solo more.
Okay, so it's definitely to be another speculation issue. As long as the cover art looks cool, then I'd
clarify, Star Wars Darth Vader issue 3.
It's published by Dark Horse, if I remember right.
This is right when Marvel got it back.
Ah,
So
okay. Yeah,
the
that's definitely been of a bit of a pain point, especially when it comes to IPs. Uh, Dark Horse is known for doing a lot of how would you describe it? The way I think of it is just a bunch of companies will lease their IPs for comics, and Dark Horse will just do them with a
Dark
decent amount of
Horse and
quality.
IDW. That's what I think of. Like, so you get GI Joe, Transformers, uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, IDW mostly for that. They'll be doing licensing comics, Power Rangers, and things of that nature. Dark, the Star Wars universe, and even mostly the Star Wars universe for Dark Horse for a long time. And Hellboy, if you ever like Hellboy, anything Hellboy related, that's big at Dark Horse.
Yeah, so we might do a separate episode for Hellboy. Like I said, we have a lot on the stack here at Short Stack, so we want to hope it's our goal to just make these comics and just storylines just that much easier to digest. It's going to be a rough ride, but I'd love to see all you on it.
And to finish up, I gotta give Image a little love here this week and say
Oof.
I'm
Dude,
looking
we've given a
forward.
lot of love for them. Let's be fair.
That's true. Just a little bit. I'm looking forward to Mercy issue 2 that's coming back. And I'm gonna have to reread issue 1 because it's been months. So I could not tell you what was going on. Just some sort of parasite creature in a Victorian age. Maybe they're vampires, maybe they're not.
Who
That's about it.
knows? That's all up to issue 2. I think that's all we have time for. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us here on Short Stack. Again, I'm your host, Matthew Poindexter.
And I'm your co-host, Trace Layton. Enjoy.
Enjoy.